I grew up on a farm, and I've always spent my free time mostly alone, walking in the woods, exploring, picking up things when I see them. It's always a surprise. I never know what I'm going to try to uncover. Usually I'll see something I haven't seen before, and I try to figure out what it is, and slowly I'll peel back layers. I'll see how it interrelates with everything else, maybe where it comes from, you know, its background and history. Just so much to learn. When I first moved here, I built a trail that went through the woods that way, and over my trail this spider built a huge web. It was about 8 feet in the air, maybe 5 feet across, and it was yellow and blue banded. And I knew right away that it was related to another silk weaver that I knew of, and it led to the discovery of the Jarrow spider for the first time in the United States. Since then, the population has grown dramatically, and it's been a couple of years we've been notating them whenever we can. They're big time in the Jefferson, Gainesville area. This is not the Jarrow spider.
Right.
I do not have a preserved Jarrow spider, but because it was so similar to this, I immediately drew the connection. And because I already knew that there was not another golden silk orb weaver, when I saw the yellow silk, it was a red flag.
So where are the normal regions that this spider is actually found?
This pink and below is where you would typically see them, all into Florida, following the coast, all into Texas.
Okay.
But close to the coast where it's warm and close to the rivers. So in the past 2 years, we've seen them move all the way up the state. The fall line is significant in a lot of ways, but it creates a different habitat because there's more of a rock subsurface. The heat leaves the area sooner. Typically, there's a lot more frost and snow above the fall line, for example. It's odd that they would jump the fall line and be all the way up here. And another thing to mention is they haven't been spotted singly. Right? Now, for me, in Athens, I just saw one banana spider.
Mm-hmm.
But down here on the Flint River, there's large communities, which basically means they've been coming for a while and people haven't noticed. It's an orb weaver. It's a long name to say it over and over, but golden silk orb weaver, because it makes golden, you know, yellow colored silk. And they're ancient spiders. There's one preserved in fossil form from the Jurassic period, and they look very similar. And because they're so ancient, they spread out a long time ago, probably before the continent split up. When the continent split, it took them, and they didn't cross back over. So you have one cousin in Asia, you know, one in Africa, one in South America, one in North America. This is the one from North America. Should have been the only one until the Jarrow spider showed up. There's a lot of similarities. So you could see immediately that they relate, one, the golden silk, but also the shape of their body. One key difference to identify this one, which in Georgia we call it the banana spider. Worldwide there's another spider called banana spider, but this is what we call it because it's yellow. The color is faded in the alcohol here, but an easy way to identify is it has hairy knuckles on its knees or whatever there.
So where exactly did you find this spider?
Joy, it was right about here. I built this trail that we're walking on, and just by happenstance, the spider built right over the trail, so there was no way for me to miss it.
So how big was this web? Like, did it go from this tree to that tree?
Yeah, they're big.
Really?
They're big, yeah. It's not the biggest web in Georgia. There's another spider I think that I would give that credit to, but it's certainly very large, and a lot of times they're way up overhead. An important thing about this spider, though, is it didn't just sort of end up because the climate was good up here one year. It had to extend because, like I said, they move slowly, so it had to move up the rivers. So this does suggest a progression, and you can insinuate a pattern. That's the reason that they're here, because of a warm temperature. Maybe not necessarily warmer all throughout the summer, but warmer through the winter. I think the important thing is just to look at the evidence and does it make sense? Not necessarily the changes around you, because a person doesn't live long enough to see all the changes or be able to explain all the changes. There's always been many ice ages, warm periods, dry periods. What makes sense to me is fossil fuels come from underground where they've been locked for a long time. We burn them, we put them in the atmosphere where they don't belong, they haven't been, and they stay up there. You can't add a new component to a system and expect no change. It's clear from all the satellite data, people that measure aerosols see mass clouds of pollutants, you know, particles, carbon in the atmosphere. Those things are greenhouse gases. All this is basic. So you could argue that this is an example of climate change, but to me it's not even necessary. This is when you have to hammer it into people's heads because they know that they've been polluting ever since the Industrial Revolution. People should look for other sources because we know that fossil fuels are not renewable. And we know that if we invest in wind, solar power, cleaner fuels, things like this, it's the way to go. But I think it's people that are making campaign promises to people in coal country that want to keep us backwards and say that climate change is not real. Things are going to change in surprising ways. That's what I mean to say. Places that are dry now may become wet. Places that are wet now may become dry. I mean, it's a big world, and there's room for things to fan out a little bit. Hopefully, it doesn't get too bad before things adjust. Right now, everyone's looking for proof of climate change. I'm saying it's happening whether there's proof or not, and the things that you may think are proof may just be eccentric years. For example, next year the daffodils may come early, or they may come late, and then the reverse happens the following year. It doesn't necessarily mean it's because of greenhouse gases. It could be, there's so many things that play into it. I don't know if this is climate change. I haven't seen them enough, but do you know what morel mushrooms are?
Mm-mm.
They're top shelf mushrooms. They're the best, and they're super expensive. One, because they taste like beef. Yeah, it's so good. But the second reason is you can't farm them. They rely on a complicated subterranean network that I guess we just don't know the recipe for. But they grow great in some areas, and some areas they just won't. So when you find them, people typically keep it secret. People pay money to go where they're known to be found and harvest them. And when I first moved here, they were growing in the woods there down a ways. And after the second year, I never saw them again. It's been 3 years without them. We are on the southern range of their habitat, and they prefer cooler weather. And because of our mild winters, they haven't showed up. So if all I talked about was a spider, it's just a spider. If all I talked about was a mushroom, it's just mushrooms. They're rare. But when all these things come into junction, into one conversation, then you start to see a broader picture.